And so normally, with the Chicago Bears playing on Thanksgiving, it would be like something I would really look forward to. Coming into this season, when we were doing all our picks and everything like that, I foolishly believed that the Bears would have a lot of success against the Detroit Lions. I felt mainly because the matchup was always very difficult for the Lions. And one of the reasons why, and we'll discuss this at great length with Greg Braggs, because this is going to be fun tonight because we're so close to the game. Usually we have a couple of days. We're still kind of reacting to what happened on Sunday, starting to look forward to Sunday, but now the game's tomorrow. So we're going to have to really dive into this tonight. And I can't wait to break it down. One of the reasons I really, truly believe that we always gave the Lions fits was they play a lot of man defense. You have a quarterback who can run the football. And a couple of weeks ago, Caleb wasn't running the ball. And you were like, gosh, I wonder, if that's ever going to turn around. And over the last 2 games, ever since Thomas Brown took over as the offensive coordinator, I know that Braggs is sitting in the background listening. Like, I want to talk about all this stuff, but we will. But the fact of the matter is I've always been really confident that the Bears are going to play the Lions really well. And honestly, I really do think that we are. As foolish as that sounds, as myopic as it could be, and I know that I'm the homer. I'm the only one in the NFL Network who picks the Bears and all that stuff. I really do believe that the Bears have a great opportunity to beat the Lions this week. I can't wait to talk about it. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois, the sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? And it's time for Take It to the Rank. A great session is upcoming. And by the way, we're back at our original time slot because usually we have a lot of moving parts. We are talking to Tyler Scott at certain times, Greg Braggs. It's easier for him to come on at certain points, but we're back on our original time here at 7 Eastern, 6 Central time. I hope everybody, and by the way, it's a miracle that the NFL Fantasy Live show just ended, and yet somehow in LA holiday traffic, I was able to drive all the way down from Inglewood, California to be here 2 minutes. 2 minutes it took me. By the way, if anybody watched NFL Fantasy Live this evening, or if you plan to, it's a very special episode because I actually hosted the show. Probably the last time they'll ever ask me to do that, but I hosted it. I think it went okay. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how they judge those things. But listen, without further ado, let's bring on our co-host of the evening, Greg Braggs, who was fighting the traffic himself now all the time. Yes. Like we sit here, and there's always a meme that goes around of LA traffic on the holiday right before the getaway day of Thanksgiving. Traffic is going both ways. Is it the same in Illinois as you were making your way home this afternoon?
It was madness. I'm all the way up in Fox Lake, which is like, might as well be in Wisconsin. So I'm
Fox Lake.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make my way all the way back down, like coming down by the lake, coming through Chicago to get to myself in Northwest Indiana, where I happily have resided my entire life. And the GPS kept having me go off track from taking the highway, which was completely jammed up. I'm like taking all these side roads where there's like residential area. I think I drove through the richest subdivision in all of Illinois. So that was interesting. Maybe scouting some good trick-or-treating spots for Addison next year, but I made it. I finally made it, and here I am and excited to get it on, man. Bears Lions tomorrow.
We're very happy to have you on, but and I knew that you lived in Indiana. You're not a Chicago person? I thought you moved there you moved to the suburb. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Matt Money Smith is the same way. Like he was from a place very close to where you are right there. Like a lot of people don't see. It's so weird when you talk to a Californian. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, well, not it. Because like when Matt Money Smith would always have to explain this. Like, well, no, I'm from Indiana. Like South Bend, Indiana is sort of like a suburb of Chicago. Not real, but sort of. I mean, actually, if you put it on the map of where California is, it's like it would be considered one of the suburbs.
Right.
So it's funny and it's fascinating to people that are like, well, it's not even the same thing. Like, oh god.
Well, right. I mean, so Shane Marsaw from Tape Never Lies Network, our buddy, he likes to give me crap because a lot of times from people where I live in Northwest Indiana, which is called the region.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to make it easier. If I'm out of town and somebody asks where I'm from, I'm going to say Chicago.
Of course.
And for people that are actually
people from Madison say they're from Chicago.
Right. So, and people that are actually from Chicago get really pissed off with people like me, especially people like me. But what people don't understand is the Chicago metropolitan area, aka the Chicagoland area. So it consists of 3 different states, a little part of Wisconsin, a little part of Indiana, and then Chicago itself. I live in the little part of Indiana that is considered the Chicago metropolitan area. So I'm allowed to claim Chicago, whether Chicagoans like it or not. I am Chicago, and I just don't have to pay the taxes. So I'm double dipping here.
No, I love it. And it's funny too, because like typically you walk around and people are like, where were you from originally? Like I grew up in Southern California, obviously, but people are like, where are you from originally? I'm like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And they're like, oh, I'm from Naperville. You're like, oh, okay, well then Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, like you get it. I'm from the Chicagoland area based on your nuance of whatever. It's like trying to talk music with Michael F.
Right.
Like he doesn't.
And Matt Eberflus is in the chat, and he says, you're not from Chicago. Well, guess what, Matt Eberflus? You got about...
You're not going to be from Chicago.
48 hours, all right, there. But thank you for hanging out in the chat.
Let me ask you, though, what are you anticipating going into this one? Because I've talked to a number of people throughout the day when I was walking the halls of the NFL Network, and everybody's like, how are you feeling? And I said, well, a couple of weeks ago, when the Bears were coming off the Commanders game, I said, we'll find out how the team feels about the coaching staff based on how they respond in Arizona and against the New England Patriots. And they let the world know that they hate their coach. But over the last couple of weeks, they played much better. I know that part of it is Thomas Brown, but I think it's also part of they're also prideful human beings who don't want to be embarrassed on national television time and time again.
Right.
I really anticipate them playing very well tomorrow. I don't know, I'm picking them to win, obviously, but I think they play really well tomorrow. I think they almost shock the world with how well they play.
Well, you are certainly the hero that we need in this dark time, and probably the only person in existence that's going to pick the Bears to beat the Lions. But yeah, I mean, when people say, "Oh, well, they haven't quit," well, they are playing for themselves. They are playing for each other as teammates, and
they want to get paid next season. Keenan Allen's a free agent.
Exactly. You can't put on tape for 9 games where you just completely let go of the rope because you're mad at the coaching staff. You have to still put your own tape out there that shows that you're a competent football player, because that affects your future earnings in this league, whether it's on the Bears or somewhere else. So yeah, the last couple of weeks have certainly been encouraging football. I mean, we were dreading watching games. Like I was dreading watching the Bears play the Packers, right?
100%.
And now we've turned a corner here these last couple of weeks. I mean, after each of these losses in this 5-game losing streak, we've been miserable. Like you said in the open, on Wednesday, we're still licking our wounds from the game before. This last Monday here, as soon as the game was over, I mean, there was the most optimistic we've felt as fans since the Bears won in London, and the Bears still haven't won since London. So that all has to do with the fact that the offense has finally found its life with Thomas Brown as the offensive coordinator. And then of course, Caleb Williams posting, 350 total yards and 2 touchdowns and leading that miraculous comeback at the end and showing his clutchness. So they're stair-stepping, right? 3 straight division games. And Green Bay was a tough test. They almost passed it, but there was just so many things that you could take from that game and say, oh, that's encouraging. Then Minnesota, it was almost like times 2, speaking specifically just to the offense. And, to beat a test, to pass a test against a very tough Minnesota Vikings team, that really presents a lot of problems, with their defense and the way they blitz. So now we take that next stair step. not just the national stage, a holiday national stage against one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. So I guarantee the Bears players are going to get up for this one. I mean, Adam, would you argue that of the 3 Thanksgiving games, that the 11:30 Central Time slot, that first game is the most prime time of the 3 games on the holiday? Because this is kind of how I break it down.
For this year specifically, or in general?
Every Thanksgiving, because my process personally, and maybe it's different for everybody else, and obviously you live on the West Coast.
Honestly, I will tell you this, as I mean to interrupt here. It's interesting because I think for the East Coast and the Midwest, this might be the case. But for the West Coast, when the Lions have been as dreadful as they've been, we go out and play golf. We play golf and we get home in time to go to the Cowboy to watch. Get home, like by the time you have to go to some place, some in-laws house or whatever.
Well, I think what you have to be used to is us here in the Midwest and the East Coast. We kind of act like the West Coast doesn't exist.
100%.
So when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about you or anyone else that lives over there, because you guys might as well live in China as far as I'm concerned. So what I'm saying is,
I would even suggest.
So what I'm saying is that the process for at least a lot of people I know is 11:30 first game. That's everybody hanging out at the house, watching the game, eating.
It's the most unfettered watching time, right, because nobody's eating.
Right. You're just eating the appetizer, whatever you got on the little plates on the tables, and the food's still cooking. But by the time the second game rolls around, now you're sitting at the table and you're eating that turkey. You're eating the Thanksgiving food, and the game might still be on the TV, and the uncle and the grandpa that refused to move from the living room, their station, but everybody else is at the table. And then by nighttime, the last game, everybody's gone home at that point. So to me, this is, at least for the people that live in normal time zones, this is normal. The most prime time of the Thanksgiving games.
Normal. We have it easy. I can't even imagine. It's funny, but I would even say, like, on the West Coast, a lot of people for years would skip the morning game, not even consider it. You're out doing whatever. By the way, and as you sit here and you're breaking down the Thanksgiving, it reminds me how much I dread Thanksgiving, like how much I hate it. I'm so sorry. I really don't like. I'm like, oh God, like, yep. Everything that you described, I started picturing in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, can this day just be? I want to work. Like, I'm the only one at the NFL Network who's begging. Like, are you guys sure you don't need somebody to come in, please? But yeah, I think so. This is going to be the one. And I think for the Bears, this is going to be an opportunity, especially for Caleb Williams, to go out there and kind of show himself. And one of the things that I loved 2 weeks ago or last week, whatever it was, is Thomas Brown talking about, I don't care who the defensive coordinator is, I can't play scared. And this comes up because I know that sitting there on the NFL Fantasy Live show today, listening to the guys talking about, like, I'm not starting DeAndre Swift this week. And you're like, all right, well, they don't care about matchups, and they're going to find ways to get him the ball. And they've been so efficient. The Vikings have the number 5 total defense in the NFL. Caleb Williams threw for 340 yards. He had a pair of touchdowns. He had no interceptions for the 5th consecutive game. They moved the ball. He was running with great poise and everything. The only thing that happened was that, and it's funny too, because when people were talking about the rookie of the week, and by the way, Denver fans, who I have a great relationship right now, do not bring in the Bo Nix thing. We're not arguing this. Bo Nix is playing great. I have nothing against him. Bo Nix is the guy that I had confidence in, who was going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. It's the other guy and the other fan base that I don't really care for. I will say Bo Nix is playing fantastic. His team is winning. He deserves everything he's getting. Like, there's no argument here. And if you want to take rookie of the week because your team won, I'm fine with that. But I think what Caleb Williams, and somebody was like, well, Caleb Williams was padding his stats with overtime. You're like, he went 3 and out in overtime. Like, there were no stat padding in overtime. But the way he played and how well he played, and even though he did make a mistake there, taking that sack on second down, everything that you see against a great defense was positive. Finding those tight window throws, not being afraid to do it, doing the hero ball. And it's one of those things like when you play hero ball, like sometimes it's going to burn you. You know what? You know what we're talking about? You all go out there and you're like, hey, I'm not laying up. Eventually you're going to find the water with your driver on a short par 4 because you've got that hubris. And it caught Caleb. And if the defense could have done its job, it wouldn't have cost them the game. But it's one of those things. And so for this game, and as you say, the most unfettered for most people, and you even think about this too on the West Coast, so many people will be tuning in because there's a lot of USC fans out here who probably have not been watching Bears games. Who'll be like, oh, I'm going to get up and watch Caleb and see how he plays. I think he goes out there and plays great again. I don't care about the defense. And one of the things that I was getting at in the open here is trying to figure out why the Bears have had so much success against the Lions over the last number of years. They do find a way to frustrate Jared Goff, but on the other side of the football, Justin Fields had some great games against him because of his running ability. The Lions play a lot of man. Justin took advantage of it. They should have sealed the game last year on a long run by Justin Fields, why he got up and he started strumming the guitar, and you're like, hey, the drive's not over yet. But Eberflus probably thought it was like, hey, we're settling for the field goal anyway, so don't worry, go crazy, Justin. I think that kind of stuff matters, and I think that Caleb, if they try that again, Caleb he's obviously not the runner that Justin Fields is, but he's going to be able to go out there and burn him with his feet.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you talk about Justin Fields having the Lions number, Mitch Trubisky, it used to be an event every year.
Hey, listen, Mitch also could run.
Right, and then so you talk about the Chicago denominator with Detroit, but then you also add in the fact that Detroit has trouble on Thanksgiving.
They've lost, 6 in a row?
7 straight games
7 in a row
on Thanksgiving, 3 of which to the Chicago Bears, and 16 of its last 20 games they've lost on Thanksgiving. So, I don't, I'm not as much leaning on, they played them tough last year. That's true. This defense was trending up last year at this time when we played them, twice
twice though, late in the season. It wasn't like we played them in week 4.
Right.
No, we played them late both games. Right.
But the defense is trending the exact opposite way that it was at the time last year when we played them 2 times.
Oh yeah.
Right. So then the offense is the other aspect. So, I certainly think that it'll be a game in the first half. And then the question will be is how long can the Bears stay with Detroit? Because the last 5 weeks they've had an opportunity to win 3 of these 5 games.
Yeah.
And the players certainly feel like they should have won those 3 games that all ended on the final play of the game in the losing fashion. But those teams are also playing with their food a little bit with the Bears. Washington let the Bears hang around for way too long. Minnesota with a miracle comeback with the Bears. I mean, maybe, it's certainly all credit to Caleb Williams the way he finished that game, but maybe the Vikings kind of underestimated the possibility of that actually happening. And then all of a sudden there it is, and it's in overtime. So Detroit doesn't strike me as a team that's playing with their food this year. I know we try not to give too much compliments to our rivals in our division, but the mentality and the way these guys have come out and played every week, it's a championship mentality that you're seeing, and a focus and a drive to get back to where they got to last year. You can see that every week they come out there and play, and they're not just beating teams, they're throttling teams, good teams too. And so if the Bears want to stay with them, they can't expect to have this team, letting them hang around. Detroit's not going to play with their food. So the Bears got to be ready to eat themselves.
No, it's true. And again, I think it's incumbent on Caleb Williams to be able to take advantage of those opportunities to run the ball when they present himself. Just looking at it, the line for Caleb Williams rushing yard is 31.5, according to our friends at Circa Sports. And by the way, the world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is right at your fingertips in Illinois. The Circa Sports app is sports betting the way it should be. Bet anywhere in Illinois and experience high betting limits, better moneyline splits, more in-game betting, and the best customer service. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com and start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. If you or someone you know has a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234. And that is an important note that you mentioned about the Lions not messing around with teams, because a couple of weeks ago they were playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. They put up a half 100 on them. Part of the reason is Hendon Hooker sucks so much. They don't want people to know how bad Hendon Hooker is. So they do not want to put him in the game. And it's surprising to me that the Lions weren't in the mix for Daniel Jones like the Minnesota Vikings were. The Vikings signed Daniel Jones. And by the way, we talked about this Monday night on CHGO After Dark. Sears Tower, which is a burner account of somebody who's in the know, who knows what's going on in the NFL. It's somebody who would probably get in trouble from their employer if they were tweeting out this information. So they have to make a burner account for his or her safety to make sure, but Sears Tower has been spot on. They called the Daniel Jones thing, but they also mentioned that it looked like everybody wanted Matt Eberflus gone except for Ryan Poles. And as you sit here and you think about the possibility, what Dan Campbell's been able to do, when I look at a potential head coach for the Bears moving forward, I am more and more convinced that we need somebody other, and I know everybody loves Ben Johnson, but listen, we hired Matt Nagy for the same reasons you would hire Ben Johnson. I think you need that alpha male. And I think that you need I think you guys forget Ben Johnson. I would want a Dan Campbell type, somebody who, if the Bears were in the position the Lions are in right now, would take no mercy on teams and put them away. What do you see? What do you say?
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from there. I'm not writing Ben Johnson off at this point though either. And I think tomorrow that's going to be an intriguing matchup, right? You get an opportunity to see how Caleb Williams fares against one of the best defenses and teams in the league. And then we also get a close eye on Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson gets to get a close eye on what the Bears are doing here. And so I think that whole dynamic is certainly interesting. And if it were me, after this game concludes, and if the Lions do beat the Bears, and if they certainly were to beat them in convincing fashion, or if it's in embarrassing fashion for Matt Eberflus, regardless, in any fashion, I think Matt Eberflus should be fired on Black Friday. Will he or won't be? The Sears Tower seems to think that he won't be. I think that there's a very real possibility that he could be, and I do think he should be. And so I think that opens the door to the opportunity to give a 5-game audition through the month of December for Thomas Brown. And I understand all the pros and cons. We've talked about it ad nauseum as Bears fans here for the last week, as Thomas Brown starts to build momentum as somebody that could potentially become a candidate. But at the end of the day, he is the only guy right now that you could give a 5-game audition to. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, especially if he is at somebody that you end up interviewing. Again, acknowledging the pros and cons, and the con being that, they have good momentum going with Caleb. Why mess that up right now? Well, they need to find a head coach. And to your point, they need to get an alpha in there that's going to command the respect of the locker room, demand the details of the players, and have something, tangible for this Bears team to go into the offseason with, and then come out next year with a sense of urgency to start winning some football games. So, I understand the whole Mike Vrabels of the world. I understand the idea of a guy like Ben Johnson, and I think both those guys should be interviewed. But I also think in the immediate future right now, you have an opportunity to see what you have in Thomas Brown, who I do believe checks a couple boxes. One, I think he has a lot of respect from the players in the locker room, from the things that I've heard. And then two, I know that he can call plays and develop a quarterback based off of what I've already seen here in 2 weeks. And people want to say, it's only 2 games. Well, acknowledge Thomas Brown's resume for 3 seconds, Bears fans, and quit looking at what's right in front of your face. And 2, don't sell short what he's done here in these 2 weeks. Yes, let's see how it plays out for the rest of the year. But for him to, on a short week against Green Bay, he finds out he's the OC by Wednesday. And then on Sunday, he's got an offense that was rock bottom, could only score 3 points against the Patriots, and turn that offense into 400 total yards against Green Bay, where your quarterback finally looks like the number 1 pick for the first time in a month and a half. And then a week later against Minnesota, the toughest defense they played all year, he gets Caleb Williams and that offense to have their best game of the year against the best defense they've played all year. So now here's the biggest test against Detroit on a short week. If he continues to stack the deck and stack these kind of performances offensively, I think Thomas Brown absolutely is somebody that Bears fans should be seriously considering and stop pushing him to the side simply because he's a part of a staff that we all vehemently hate.
Well, and forgive me because I should be looking this up before I say this, but I'm just going to, my bold conjecture is that he was part of the Rams staff that brought in Baker Mayfield. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like they intersected in Los Angeles because the Rams have done a pretty nice job of obviously developing quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford's been playing some of his best football, although he came in as an established player, but Baker Mayfield, some of the other guys who come through. So I really do believe that as much as you look at other offensive coordinators around the NFL, and anytime that people are talking about, potential hires for the Chicago Bears, I know Liam Cohen from Tampa Bay gets mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury for obvious reasons, although nobody wants to look at what's going on in Washington and be like, Jaden hasn't played well over the last month. See, like his streak of not playing well might be longer than Caleb's when you consider, like, statistically in a fantasy football sense, he's been fine. But if you take away and I know these plays happen, and if you take away all his touchdowns, he had none. But he's benefited from the fail Mary. He's benefited from the Cowboys defense not tackling Terry McLaurin. And I'm just saying that if you really sit there and study it and watch the games, you're like, oh yeah, he's not playing well. So I think a lot of these coaches come with an asterisk. If the Bears continue to play well, let's say that they lose 52-31 or whatever, and then perhaps Sears Tower might be right about Matt Eberflus and he stays. Would you, if Caleb finishes strong, let's say he finishes real strong, he finishes like he's done the last 2 games, why would you favor Ben Johnson over Thomas Brown? I want to know why fans would do that, because we know how he works with Caleb. We don't know if Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are going to get along. We don't know if Ben Johnson has been benefiting from the fact that Dan Campbell has this team motivated and ready to go. Like you think about that. Like we've eaten it with offensive coordinators before. But if somebody comes in and is excelling with Matt Eberflus looking over, like that, to me, the degree of difficulty is going way up as opposed to what's going on in Detroit right now.
No question about it. What number one thing that fans hate when a quarterback drops back is when they predetermine where they're going to go with the football before reading the field. Well, don't make the same mistake, Bears fans. Read the field when you're dropping back and looking at your head coach. And if you predetermine that you're going for Ben Johnson, then you don't have your eyes open to the field. And Thomas Jones might be the guy that's wide open, the obvious pass that you got to make. And do you want this team to succeed for the next 5 years? You better not, have blinders on to the guys that should be an option, and again, not handing Thomas Brown the keys, but I think he absolutely is somebody, if this trend continues as the season progresses. DJ Moore, Caleb Williams to DJ Moore over the last 2 games, 14-14. All of a sudden, the DJ Moore's role is looking like it makes a lot more sense. Keenan Allen got like 15 targets against the Vikings. Yes, he did have a couple drops, but he had a bunch of catches in there too. That's who that was the reason they brought in Keenan Allen, was a lot of the plays he made, last Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. And then obviously,
and one of those incompletions was him, his toe not getting down, which is like, all right.
Yeah, it's 100%. And that was an amazing throw by Caleb Williams. And so you hear Thomas Brown encouraging Caleb Williams, go be Superman at the end of the game. And I think he understands that, I think Thomas Brown threads the needle of understanding how he needs to be tough on Caleb Williams throughout the week to get him dialed in to the nuance and the details to be ready for Sunday. And then also in that moment, understanding to, hey, put some hype in this kid, because he is the kind of guy that takes some confidence from things like that. And he tells him, go be Superman. And then he goes and does. So, I like the way Thomas Brown is handling everything, not just with Caleb Williams, but the entire offense. And so, the other thing is it's just, I don't know. For me, I'm extremely encouraged by what I'm seeing, and I'm intrigued. And people are taking this for, oh, you just want to give him the keys of the kingdom now. No, I'm keeping an open mind. And as I said, I'm reading the whole field. And if you want to, be, just stuck to your predetermined read, go for it. I have nothing against Ben Johnson, but as it stands right now, I'm learning a lot about Thomas Brown. And so I understand who Ben Johnson is over here. And this is going to be what we have to weigh as the season gets to an end.
And going back to your earlier point, we could learn so much more about him.
Right.
Like, we could really find out what this is going to be. Whatever you think about Ben Johnson, one way or the other, we do not know. And we're never going to get a chance to know until he becomes a head coach of an NFL team. And I know that when we were on with Joey on Monday night, he was pointing out, like, well, you have all these interim coaches that don't go on to find success once they're promoted, Antonio Pierce being the most recent among them. But at the same time, it's like, how many coaches get hired and don't fare well anyways? Like, Brandon Staley seemed like a slam dunk when he was hired by the LA Chargers years ago. A lot of these guys are like, oh, this is what a great, every hire is always applauded. I sit here, and as I watch Rex Ryan stumping to be the next coach of the New York Jets, I'm like, you know what? I'm so happy that as bad as things are going for us, we're not in this position of like, are we really considering? Like, imagine if like we were considering bringing in Matt Nagy. Like, if Matt Nagy was like, hey, you know what? Like, I grew up in Chicago. I really love the Bears. Like, if Matt Nagy was on ESPN right now or on an NFL network, just campaigning openly for the Bears job, like, hey, we had some good times. We went to the playoffs a few times. We almost won, if not for the double doink and all this stuff. And the the Bears being like, yeah, this actually isn't a bad idea. So I think that we're in a pretty good spot, but I really want to take it the extra step. I'm like, let's just find out. Like, we know what's happening with Matt Eberflus. Like, There's nothing he could do, barring a miracle.
You see the Jets, they hired the 33rd team to help figure out who their coaching staff
Mike
is.
Tannenbaum's in
one
there.
One of them is somebody the Jets once fired, and now he's going to help.
Can you imagine? Yeah, we're bringing back Ted Phillips to help shore up our coaching search. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's the one thing I know that, like, I spend too much time on Twitter, the people who don't like Kevin Warren or whatnot, and you're like, oh gosh, but at least it just feels more adult now. That's another thing too. Like, and believe me, I am the number one McCaskey defender on the internet on this. Like, I'm always going to bat for them. And we were in a thread the other day with talking about, like, and you brought up the point of like, hey, the Ford family still owns the Lions, and astutely somebody pointed out, like, well, who is it? Teresa, who took over? What's her name? But whatever. And you're like, yeah, I go, but that's the thing. It's like the Bears did make moves, as much as you don't like the people don't like the McCaskies. And I don't want to make this Sheila. Thank you. Getting rid of Ted Phillips was like such an important thing. And I'm not going to bash Ted Phillips or anything like that, but like, he wasn't a football guy. He's not Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren has, pelts on the wall. Like, he's been through this. Take a moment to go to Minnesota and go to the US Bank Stadium and be like, I think I can kind of trust Kevin Warren and what he's going to be doing and what he's bringing to this organization. So I think that this organization is making steps. It's all about making the right move. And to me, in some respects, and I hate to say this, but like, the Ben Johnson thing seems so obvious that it's like, I don't know. As badly as Matt Eberflus was, and like, talked myself into that one. The Ben Johnson, I don't know. I've been down this road before. It screams more Matt Nagy to me. Mark Trestman was a different thing, because I feel like we could have a Bruce Arians type of hire if we went with somebody like Mike Vrabel, who has gone to playoffs, has gone to the AFC Championship game, who's a little bit of a nutcase, but would fit in with Chicago very well. And if his offensive coordinator was good, then I'm like, yeah, all bets are off. I think this team could really be onto something.
Yeah, I get it. I get it with Ben Johnson. I mean, if you'd asked me a month and a half ago, he was at the top of my list. So I'm not trying to, and I think people are like, oh, well, he's not a leader of men. You don't know that. Every person that I
that's another point. It's like we'll never know, but we could know with Thomas Brown.
100%. That's why it's logically the thing they absolutely should do. Because the one thing that's going to irritate me is they leave Thomas Brown as the OC up in the box calling plays upstairs. And then at the end of the year, Caleb and him have such a good rapport that Caleb vouches for him to be the next head coach, or they just understand that this is probably the pathway they should take. He never gets the opportunity on the sidelines. And then they do hire him as the head coach without the same. We're worried about who, right. It's the same thing with Ben. We don't know who Ben Johnson will be, and we won't until week 1 in September of next year. And if you hire Thomas Brown after the season and never give that auditioned opportunity, and you're walking into September blind of not truly knowing who he is as a head coach on that sideline, that's when I am going to be critical and nervous that we actually know everything we need to know about Thomas Brown actually working out as the head coach. I'll certainly be optimistic because I like what I see so far, but why not get as much information as you possibly can about one of your 5 to 7 candidates that I have to imagine that the Bears are going to consider when they start this hiring process?
How many get second interviews? We'll never know, but it's one of those things. I will point out though, the one thing going in Thomas Brown's favor, and it was something that Tim Jenkins pointed out, and if you're looking for somebody outside of the Bears family who does quarterback breakdowns, who does a really nice job, I think Tim Jenkins is probably my favorite of all of them over JT O'Sullivan and some of the other guys. Even Chase Daniel does a nice job too. I'm friends with Chase, so I should probably give him the benefit. Although here's the thing that bothers me about Chase Daniel is that on his show, the locker room or whatever it's called, the thing that they do on Fox, he does a nice job. Like Chase is a great broadcaster. But they all wear their sweatshirts on Thursdays or whatever. And he's always wearing a Chiefs sweatshirt. And I'm like, bro, like you can't once throw on a Bears hoodie or whatever. Like even the Chargers, like, dude, give somebody else other, like you're wearing the Chiefs thing a little too much.
You talk about quarterbacks, Bears quarterbacks having the Lions number on Thanksgiving. Chase Daniel, he had a win over the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. So
that's why I forgave him for the Giants game. It's the only thing that was going in his favor. I even somewhere around here, I wish I don't have it close. Usually we do this for the Tyler Scott show, is we always break out some cards because I have a Chase Daniel Chicago Bears card. And speaking of sports cards, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in all things Chicago sports, whether you are a fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, or Sky. I got it. They have you covered with an extensive list of not only cards, but memorabilia, signed items, and everything like that. Or if you want to go outside of the Chicago sports, if you want to find a Ken Griffey rookie card, if you want to find Shohei Ohtani cards, who did the Dodgers just sign? Blake Snell, his new Dodger card coming out. Windy City Sports Cards has you covered with all your sports teams. I still have a box here. Anillo and Sammy cannot believe that I have not opened this box from Windy City Sports Cards because I'm waiting. I'm waiting to do it. By the way, I also got a box of golf balls from Srixon. I got to bring you some of these golf balls from Srixon. I'm going to go try some out this week. I got a chance to go to the range the other day. Mm-hmm. Okay, it was today. We tape Fantasy Live in the morning. Don't tell anybody. Despite my complaining on the show today, I did go to the range. Oh, I was piping them. I need to go play. I need to go get that back 9 in tomorrow. See, that's the cool thing about being out here. I can go play the back 9. I could actually, if I get out early enough, I could play 18, still get home in time for the Bears kickoff, which would be amazing. But in any event, Sammy, do we have any questions, by the way? I know that we've been rambling for a moment, but if we have anything that anybody's wondering, can you give T. Brown credit for Caleb Williams off-schedule plays? I will say this, he's not playing scared, so I think in a way you probably could, but what do you think, Greg?
Yeah, and then he adds on, don't you think Caleb's talent is making Thomas Brown look good? I mean, the idea is, they both work hand in hand.
It didn't make Shane Waldron look good.
Right. Thomas Brown, I was arguing with my guy David Kaplan. He called me yesterday because he's very mad at me about my Thomas Brown takes. He thinks I've gone awry with
it. Does he call you?
Yeah, he'll call. Yeah, he'll call me, start yelling at me, and so he's yelling at me about hyping up Thomas Brown too much, and we got into a debate on whether or not he's actually scheming DJ Moore. I go, he absolutely is. So, to your questioning, you're asking, in the chat, hey, is it? How about all these off-schedule plays? Run the tape back these last 2 weeks. These are in the pocket, on schedule plays. He's had a few plays where he gets out of the pocket or he runs.
Yeah.
And certainly Caleb Williams.
That one first down where he escaped from the end zone was really nice, which was all nice. Caleb.
And then, of course, the throw down the sidelines, which was a mirror image of a throw he had last year at USC to all those people that
was that the throw to DeAndre Swift?
Yes. And
the funny thing about that is he should have hit DeAndre Swift as the dump off. That was his check down that he didn't see. And then he got out there and then he makes a hero play, which was one of the criticisms of him coming out of college, is that he makes too many hero plays and doesn't take the check down. And I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No, it's fine.
Grossly.
Well, the interesting thing about that play was in the post-game press conference, Caleb admitted that the guy that came in on the blitz, he didn't recognize the amount of players in the box and didn't account for him. So when that guy came in hot, Caleb was not anticipating it initially and just used his God-given ability to shake him, get around the corner, and then make the throw down the field. So he's scrambling at that point because he's like, oh man, this has caught me off guard. And so right there, that's all Caleb Williams, right? So, we're not trying to take, you shouldn't be trying to take away anything from either of these guys.
Right.
That I think that they're working hand in hand to elevate, the offense and Caleb's game and Thomas Brown's reputation.
No. And it's interesting too, because you look at that and you look at some of the stuff and Caleb's still making, he still makes some mistakes. He's a rookie, which I'm fine with. You can still make mistakes. I'm coaching an all-star team now, and it's we're still going to go out here and make mistakes. Mm-hmm. It's just something that happens, and we don't mind it because you're going to grow and you're going to get better. You're going to recognize these things. And like you said, you have all this God-given ability to overcome some of this stuff where some of these lesser quarterbacks, Aiden O'Connell is not making that play. Caleb Williams certainly is. But one of the things that I was really impressed with, and I hate screen passes, I do, that was one of the things about the John Gruden stuff that he was or who was it? John Gruden was talking about how he hates screens because I hate screens.
He said Willie Galt never had a screen pass.
Right. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I hate screens, but I thought the way that they used them against the Minnesota Vikings was perfect because you've got to tailor your offense to what Brian Flores is going to do. And Brian Flores is really ready to go zeros and throw everybody at him, throw 6 guys at him, throw 7 guys at him, and you got to get rid of the ball quickly. And if you look at the touchdown by DJ Moore, I mean, that was a perfect example of I hate screens, but it's you get the ball on a screen to DJ Moore and you're putting your money on him making a play to beat one guy, which is exactly what he did. And that's what Thomas Brown did. And this is a thing that bothers me, again, about people who want to be dismissive of Thomas Brown because, and I know it's a short window and I know it's 2 games. And again, we should see more of him. We should give him the true opportunity. But anybody, Dave Kaplan, whomever it is, you're just as guilty with doing this with Ben Johnson. You were sitting here. Ben Johnson is working with a number 1 overall selection at quarterback who took a team to a Super Bowl. He is on a team with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Right.
Jamison Williams, Sam Laporte, like
a stout offensive line,
one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, if anything. And I feel like I've now become the hater of being like, we're giving Ben Johnson way too much credit, and everybody is sitting here and this is the most disgusting thing, is that we're playing the Lions tomorrow. We should be excited about this game, and all we're doing, and this is my fault, I've directed us into this move, into this direction. We're talking about who's going to coach next year. And I know part of it's because like two potential coaching hires are going against each other, but it's like everybody's acting like Ben Johnson is the end all be all. He is going to solve every problem, everything that ills this, and he's not. Like, we just don't know who he is as a head coach. We have no idea, and we won't have any idea until he becomes a head coach. And it could end up like somebody like, look at what's going on in Tennessee right now. And I know Callahan wasn't quite the prospect that Ben Johnson is, but, and this was, I think this even, if I'm not mistaken, Sears Tower was also intimating like, hey, NFL circles are not quite convinced that people in NFL circles don't have the same opinion of Ben Johnson that the fans do. Like, people are looking at this situation being like, maybe. They do a lot of goofy stuff too, and they get away with it. But again, so for anybody who gets upset with us pumping up Thomas Brown, at least Thomas Brown is working with our quarterback. We do know what
our offensive line. Look how good the offensive lines looked the last couple of weeks. Look at how miserable the Bears were against the blitz before Thomas Brown took over, and then go look at Caleb Williams' numbers against the blitz since. Like, those are the tangible things. When you talk about what Caleb Williams, in the screen game and how smart that was against Minnesota's defense, how they blitz. They don't just blitz. They bring 7-8 guys in the box and over the line of scrimmage. And sometimes they'll send the house, and other times they'll drop everybody out and send two, or only send two. And so it becomes a real mental chess match for a quarterback to identify those things as they're happening. And at one point there was a screen pass where a guy came around the edge that almost, if Caleb throws it on time.
Oh God, that was such a great play.
Right. And he pumps and then boom, hits him in stride. So that was a good play drawn up against the defense, but good identification by Caleb to understand there was an adjustment that needed to be made at the line of scrimmage. So that's the other aspect of this, that why, as a package between Caleb Williams and Thomas Brown, everything that's been so impressive in these, small sample size of these two games.
And again, going back to Tim Jenkins, there was the point that he made when the coaching hire was switched is that there's a personality of coaches that is discernible, whether they're up in the booth or not. And he made the joke about like how Shane Waldron's just the guy on the sideline, cracking a smile, trying to have a little bit of a joke with him, trying to be his buddy. I remember back in the day, like, this always irked me with Jim Mora, the younger Jim Mora, not the playoff guy, but his son, who was the coach for the Falcons and for the University of Washington, is like, he always tried to be so buddy with Michael Vick. And you're like, it's good. And I don't know. Like, sometimes that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And Shane Waldron always had that thing. And I saw him briefly after the Arizona game, and he didn't look bummed out enough for me to be like, because he was kind of chatting it up with one of my NFL Network colleagues. I'm like, run to the locker room. At least Tyler Scott won't look me in the eye and he'll just walk away. Shane, get out of here. But you also notice like there's a demeanor with Thomas Brown that's a little bit different. Who commands authority of this, and I know that I'm going to start sounding like draft Dr. Phil, be like, who one of these guys is a shoe salesman and somebody who is a leader of men.
Well, and to his credit, you can either love him or hate him, but he's been right about these coaches here since the minute Matt Nagy walked out, and even when they were playing well in 2018 and we were all ready to throw the parade, he continued to raised the red flags that he was identifying. We're like, you're just trying to outsmart everyone. You're just, but he's been right consistently on these coaches and, and understanding the type of moxie and character that you need, beyond just the X's and O's and everything else that requires you to be a great head coach, certainly a great head coach for the Chicago Bears. Another thing that I'll leave you with, and I know we got a few more chats we want to get to, but I haven't brought this up on the show yet. But since this is like a preview show here, really a true night before preview show, one thing to look out for, Jeff Berkus from Windy City Gridiron, he brought this up. Caleb Williams only needs 19 more pass attempts to break the all-time rookie record of consecutive pass attempts without throwing an interception.
Oh, son, why would you say this?
Set by Kyler Murray with 211. That's very good. It's already out there. Jeff tweeted it. It's already out there. You don't put this on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't put this on me because A, Jeff tweeted it, and B, we're talking about it on a podcast. The only time it actually works as a jinx is if it's said on the broadcast
of the game.
Yes. So we're still in the clear here. Okay. Trying to get you aware of an awesome feat that, Caleb Williams can be. Don't give me that look. It's the broadcast jinx. It's not the podcast jinx. It's not the Twitter jinx. It's the broadcast jinx.
Oh gosh. You know how I feel about stuff like this. Because as a matter of fact, on the NFL Network's version of Take It to the Rank today. Oh my God, my camera's gone.
See?
Can you hear me?
Look at I can hear you. I guess I did. Look at this. I must have jinxed something.
My gosh, something happened.
Fade to black, as Jeff Joniak would say. See, look what happened.
Because I hit a cord
out in the ether.
All right, I hit a cord. I'm back. I hit a cord. I did whatever. See, this show's actually live, so I'm like, you got to be careful with this. I don't know. Again, but I've been impressed with the way that he's because over the last 2 games, he's also played a lot more free. Yep. And he's also done some things that, he's starting to find those NFL windows. The first completion of the game was an absolute dot, an absolute seed. And like the wheel route that was coming out of the backfield didn't draw in the coverage as much as he thought, but Caleb Williams didn't hesitate. Still fitted in the window. The 4th down play to Roma Dunze, again, does not get enough credit for how ridiculous the game on the line throw in traffic to Roma Dunze in the tightest of windows. And again, people are just like, whatever. Nobody's talking about it or whatever. Like, I know he's not Jordan Love destroying an injury-riddled 49ers team, but it's one of those things that like we have a lot to be encouraged by. And somebody was saying like, so for all those guys who are jumping off the Caleb, I'm like, I never jumped off the Caleb Williams bandwagon. I never thought that he was there was no real, I knew the coaching wasn't doing great, but there wasn't a real cause for concern to me. And the best part of it too is going back to, I don't want to spend the time wasting my breath on Jaden Daniels. How about another question, Sammy? In the time that we have, I just don't want to talk about it. Do you think Ian Cunningham would be a good replacement for Ryan Poles? There was, I know that people were talking about this on Twitter about like somebody said if they did that, because Ian did a great, if Sears Tower, if his or her reporting is correct, that Ian Cunningham was one of those guys who was like, fire this mother. That works out well for him. And I know that people say, oh, well, if Ryan, this is the funniest part. I'm sorry. I know I'm answering this. I want you to weigh on this as well. But like, if something happened to Ryan Poles, they said, you know what? Your backing of Matt Eberflus was too egregious. You've got to go. Ian, we want you to take the job. Ian will take the job. Ian will not sit there and be like, well, you're firing my friend. Because number one, Ryan Poles himself would tell him, there's 32 of these gigs in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You get an opportunity for one, you take it. You do not do this out of loyalty. And if anybody in the sound of my voice right now works a corporate job, everybody and any like this happens in corporate America all the time. Your manager gets fired and you're promoted. Like how many people would walk off the job and be like, you know what? You're firing Ricky. I'm out. Like that it's happened. I've seen it happen twice in my life. One was a hairdresser who was making more money on the side anyways and was like, okay, well, that didn't really. And the other one was a friend who ended up doing a different show for somebody else and doing whatever. But like, it never happens where somebody would be like, nope, you fired my friend. I'm at like, no. Corporate America shows like the next person up is always like, okay, I'm in. Like, it's not like you notice that Thomas Brown didn't go like, I'm not taking, you fired Shane Waldron. I'm out of here. Take me too. He's like, no, okay, I'll do it. I think he would, but I don't think it's going to come to that.
Well, if we're basing, our reporting from or from the Sears Tower, then
which we should,
which we absolutely should. There was some reporting. I don't know if it came from Sears Tower or not, but the idea that when you say, well, Thomas Brown didn't leave because Shane Waldron did, but I think that Shane Waldron being hired reportedly, Mark Carman even reported this, that Matt Eberflus pushed hard to bring Shane Waldron in and Ryan Poles made sure Thomas Brown came in. So that's a big, that's a big hit for Ryan Poles. If indeed that is true.
If that's the case, then he's safe.
Right. I think talking a lot about
can
Ryan
see
Poles,
that.
I think Ryan Poles is safe for one.
I do too. So,
but we can talk the hypotheticals. I'm happy to talk about that. Because it's okay. I think the other, I disagree with you when you bring up, Woody and Cunningham take the job if Ryan Poles was fired. I understand your point, but I actually do. Unlike Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown, I do think Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham are extremely close. Extremely close. They are attached at the hip. And Ian Cunningham, you say there's only 32 of these, but Ian Cunningham has already passed up potential opportunities to be GM elsewhere. I believe Arizona and Washington were certainly sniffing around. And so, a lot of times with these guys that know that they're right there ready to get a GM job, they don't just take any job. They're going to take the one that's right for them. And you could arguably make the case that this is the perfect spot for Ian Cunningham. And I could understand that argument, but he has already passed up 2 of the 32 jobs reportedly. So I don't think it's out of the question that Ian Cunningham wouldn't take it if Ryan Poles was fired. And I'm actually on the opposite side of you that I don't think he would take it if Ryan Poles was fired.
Well, you're wrong. He would 100% take it. No, I'm kidding. You know what? That could very well be the case. I don't have a personal relationship with Ian Cunningham, so I could be wrong on this one. I just, knowing how the world works, judging from this. Listen, there was a bricklayer that you replaced once. Listen, when they get rid of Mark Carman, you're going to be like, you're not leaving that building. You're going to be like, okay, I'm here. No, I'm joking. Listen, it's happened listen, I wasn't the lead fantasy analyst on NFL Fantasy Live to start that show. But look at me now. I didn't walk off.
But you know what? Look at when Michael Scott quit Dunder Mifflin and Pam
left.
Pam followed him out the door. Then they made the Michael Scott Paper Company.
Yeah.
He flipped it on Dunder Mifflin's head. Dunder Mifflin had to pay the Michael Scott Paper Company to come back to their fold. Pam and Michael Scott got paid out for her courage of sticking with Michael Scott. So,
yeah, but what if Ian Cunningham pulls the Jim Halpert role and he's the mole and then he somehow gets Ryan Poles rehired?
Yes.
So there you go.
Yes.
And it was them. Oh my goodness gracious.
Is Ryan Poles going to make those giant pancakes that are as like big as like a notebook? Hey,
I'm taking some home for my kid. Are these free? How about another question? I know we're going overtime a little bit. I'm going to make Greg work overtime because I always have to work overtime on CHGO.
Mm-hmm.
What does the Lions injury situation look like? I should know this better.
I know it.
But I will tell you, the injuries that happened, I think the most significant one was to David Montgomery, who injured his shoulder, came out of that game. He said immediately afterwards that he was going to be fine. He was going to be ready to go. And I think the biggest issue that they have is on the offensive line. I forget who it is, but like they lost.
So David Montgomery and Amon-Ra St. Brown are listed as questionable, but
They're both fine.
I would
They're both fine.
Yes, I would expect them to play. And then left tackle Taylor Decker.
That's what it. Yeah,
and
Taylor Decker.
Cornerback Carlton Davis are both out.
So Decker is out. Okay, yeah. We didn't have that. That's weird. We didn't. I did the fantasy show today. As I said, oh, you know why? We record the fantasy show in the morning, and they were still practicing when we were doing this. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell Scott Hansen that I was saying that, because I will get in trouble. But we knew that David Montgomery was going to be healthy or going to be ready to go. I still put him down as the number one guy. By the way, I will say this too. Again, I don't do props, but part of my job is to identify things. And I was like, you know what? Jameson Williams has had at least 50 yards in 3 consecutive games. He's had at least 6 targets in back-to-back games. Mm-hmm. And the Bears give up a lot of production through the air. And we saw last week what Jordan Addison was able to do against this team. There are some people in the desert who think that Jameson Williams will not have 50 receiving yards. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. I'm just saying that he's topped that number for 3 consecutive games. Take over that what you will. That's the closest. He's a
dynamic player.
Yeah, he's really good. And if Amon-Ra St. Brown is going through an injury, there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, how about another? Is there another question there, Sammy? I won't make him wait too long.
Oh, you're fine.
Also, can Caleb stay healthy behind that offensive line? I mean, like, thanks, Jimmy. He's played well. I mean, they're getting rid of the ball. He's kind of protecting himself. I think the worst thing is that, you know, and again, I don't want to be the person who has to always sit here and complain about the referees. But on that play in the end zone, where he scrambles, gets out of trouble, makes his way to the sideline, he's hitting the head right in front of a referee. I'm more worried about the referees not protecting him.
When Van Ginkel hit him on the third down play, the Bears had to punt, and he hit him right in the
behind the back.
He elbowed him in the back.
Yes,
that pissed me off so much.
I wanted to fight somebody.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would have fought if I was at that stadium. I would have. Fighting.
It is. I just don't understand why the Bears will
it's a curse of the Bears.
Bear thing.
Justin Fields just got his first ever personal foul called for his favor.
I think I was joking. I think I was joking when I said that. I think it's happened a couple times this season.
Well,
but
don't let the facts get in the way of.
But it was a Monday night game, because I think people are like, oh, there was a play and what? I'm like, I don't care. It never happened in Chicago. It was the first time he'd ever been flagged, especially in a primetime game. The first time he had ever been flagged. By the way, I would say this, and this is the God's honest truth, and I'll fight anybody. Mike North and I can go back and forth on this. If the Charles Martin play happened right now, I don't think the Packers get flagged. I think the Packers, they're like, it's the Packers. And I think, and I sincerely believe, that the Bears would send something to the league office and be like, hey, take a look at this Charles Martin play. We think this is dirty. The league office would be like, no, I see no problem with that. That looked fine to us. Quit belly aching, Chicago. You lost the game.
Right.
That's my conjecture.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Packers, Jimmy Hoffa, he's a Packer fan. He'll admit it. They get away with murder.
They get away with everything. Even the 49ers were upset with them. And even the quick snap. And by the way, I don't care. I don't want to spend too much time on the Packers, but their quick snap stuff that everybody like applauds them for, it's so chicken shit. Like it is. They are the guys who go play rec basketball, who are like, hey, pass me the ball, pass me. And then like, you're not playing shirts and skins. You're just like, hey, you're playing pickup. And you pass it to him. You're like, oh crap, you're not on my team. And he goes down and scores a cheap layup. Aaron Rodgers was famous for that. Matt LaFleur would be that guy who does that all the time. Like Matt LaFleur is the best of the mid coaches.
Yep. Well, I mean, we've already seen, where it's going with Kyle Shanahan. And so it's only a matter of time that the Packers see the same fate.
No, they won't though. He's I listen, whatever. Do we have anything else, Sammy? I don't want to. We got to. Oh, I forgot. Are you going out tonight?
No, we are cooking Thanksgiving. We're getting everything pre-ready for our Thanksgiving meal that we're bringing to the CHGO Sports Studios tomorrow because we're going to be in studio.
Right.
You're begging to work, and we're going to the CHGO Sports Studios in Chicago to do the pregame and postgame show. So we're going to be there from 9:30 a.m. till probably 5-6 o'clock at night after we're done with the postgame shows. So I offered up to our crew, the CHGO Bears crew, that we're going to bring some Thanksgiving there, do some fun content. As you know, I've brought it up many times on shows that we've been on that I don't like Thanksgiving. I'm against. I don't like turkey. I don't like all the mushy sides crap that everybody loves. Not like I eat Thanksgiving every year. So like people are like, well, what do you eat? I eat Thanksgiving. I just don't like. Everybody acts like it's like the greatest food ever. And give me prime rib any day on a holiday like this over turkey, which is maybe the 9th best cut of meat you could possibly have, which is why everyone only eats it one time a year. But I don't mean to ruin, the Thanksgiving spirit.
No,
everyone enjoy their stupid Thanksgiving. So we're going to cook Thanksgiving. We're going to bring it to the studio and, I'm going to give it another shot. Maybe one of these days I'll see the light on why everyone else loves it.
Hey man, well, everybody, the class of 2007 of Oswego High School getting together on the Portillo's there. Everybody who went to Hoffman Estates High getting together tonight, going out and doing all that stuff. It's fine. Enjoy it. Personally, I don't know. I always have, I don't feel like I'm that picky of an eater, but I will say though, this is the only time of the year that you have stuffing. Like if you work for Stovetop, you have the easiest job in the world. You only have to worry about one day. Can we provide enough Stovetop stuffing for one day? And then we got the year off. I feel like my job's easy as a fantasy person. I work 4 months out of the year. The Stovetop people work for 1 week. Just make sure that all the Safeways have enough Stovetop, and that's all you got to do. What a great gig. Who do you work for? Stovetop. What do you do for the other 51 weeks out of the year? It's unbelievable. And by the way, the Canadians have it right too. Do this in October. It's almost, it's encroaching on Christmas. And my kids have been chomping at the bit to be wearing Christmas stuff. And having Christmas, I'm looking outside right now.
That's the one thing I like about Thanksgiving is the opening kickoff to Christmas. So for us, Addie typically I'll put the tree up on Thanksgiving night and then we'll start decorating. So my daughter,
because Christmas is in 4 days.
Right.
It's so late.
That's my biggest thing is I don't like people that put up their Christmas tree on Halloween. That's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, I do like to get it up on Thanksgiving night because Christmas is here before you know it. And it takes a lot of work to pull out all the Christmas stuff. Yeah. And so I want to make it worth my while to actually have it up for an extended period of time, or else I'm not pulling it out of the shed. So my 6-year-old daughter, Addison, had us put up the tree a week and a half ago, but we didn't decorate it. She put up a few things, but not much. So we have all the ornaments ready. The tree's already up. Everything's clean, ready to go. And so tomorrow night, after everything's done and all the pomp and circumstance of the Bears game day coverage, our family will get home and we'll put up the ornaments and watching my 6-year-old daughter, light up for all that stuff that's makes it all worth it.
It's amazing. That part of it is going to be great. And honestly, I'm very thankful for you for being on the show this year. We really cannot give you enough praise for what you've brought to the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. You've raised the level. You've raised us into a championship contender, and I thank you. And thanks to I told Anello and Sammy 3 months ago when they had their Thanksgiving in Canada that I appreciated them. But and a big thank you to everybody who comes in week and week out, has a little fun with this show. Hopefully you get some sense of enjoyment out of this and you have a good time. And we sit here and we talk about the Chicago Bears. We know that it's not all this serious, but it is a good time and it is fun and we love it. And we wear our hearts on our sleeves and we wouldn't have it any other way. So Greg, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everybody else for being here. So I guess I'll be back. I guess I will be back tomorrow after the game to talk about what had happened. But until that time, thanks, everybody. Enjoy your holiday. Bear down. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcast. Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois.